The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
The Pittsburgh Steelers have traded for DK Metcalf.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
The Pittsburgh Steelers have traded a second-round pick to the Seattle Seahawks for the rights to DK Metcalf, their star wide receiver, and there is already a deal in place, a 5-year, $130 million deal in place to get DK Metcalf. That is a huge deal for the Steelers to be landing their superstar wide receiver. Omar Khan, obviously been busy while everyone else was talking and saying, what are the Steelers up to, including myself? And now they have made their move, and we are going to talk about the immediate fallout, because make no mistake, this is the first domino in several to play. Now, I will say it's very interesting. It is very interesting that no domino has fell on the QB conversation. We're going to get to that in a bit. But let's talk about DK Metcalf. The Pittsburgh Steelers, according to all sources, traded their second-round pick, the 52nd overall pick in this NFL draft class, to the Seattle Seahawks for the rights to DK Metcalf. They're paying him 5 years, $150 million, $30 million a year, basically, to do that. That is going to drastically change what the offense is about, what the weapons are about on offense, and how they move forward. That gives you another playmaker next to George Pickens. But I have to ask this, and I think this is the immediate question. What is the plan for George Pickens? Because DK Metcalf, number one wide receiver, definitely that type. Go up and get it guy, big playmaker. Also, can be a leader for you. He has all those traits. He's older. He's more mature than George Pickens. Do you pair those guys up? But when you look at the money that's being offered to DK Metcalf right now, you have to ask yourself, are the Steelers planning to play DK and trade off George because they don't want to pay George what he's worth after this season? That's a big question facing the Steelers. But there's no doubt the Steelers, there were all the rumors they wanted to make a big move at wide receiver last year. It all fell through. Christian Kirk got hurt. The Brandon Ayuk deal didn't work out. Everything kept falling through. This one doesn't fall through. Now, I do think there's a serious question about compensation. Second-round pick for DK Metcalf. And you're paying him big money. This is where I've been saying, I don't know. The first and the third was completely out of the equation for me. I said, there's no way you give up even a first-round pick for DK Metcalf. Personally, I was more of the inclination that it should be a third-round pick that they give up for him, and then they're able to work it out, because this is going to come with big money that's going to be tied to it. Because right now, DK Metcalf basically counts as a free agent that you're adding in this offseason when you think of salary cap terms, because as of going into this weekend, the Steelers had about $64-ish million in cap space. That is basically cut in half by the DK Metcalf deal. And that's not a bad thing. They went out and got their guy. Awesome. But they still need to sign a quarterback, which we don't know what's happening yet. Justin Fields is rumored to maybe be interested in the Jets. That he's trying to test free agency. The Steelers, according to Diana Rossini, are looking to offer maybe Sam Darnold a contract. Does that mean they want Darnold as their starter? Does that mean that they're looking at Russell Wilson? I don't know what's going on there. And obvious, the DK Metcalf trade brings into question, is Russell Wilson returning? Lots to break down, from those aspects. But I think the bottom line is the Steelers are committed to trying to re-up things on offense and invest in their offense to have playmakers. It was never not their want to do that. It was trying to do it at their own pace and get their own guy. And DK Metcalf turns out to be their guy. I just don't know if this means DK Metcalf's going to lead a room with George Pickens in it, or if DK Metcalf is the guy right now. And now if you're the Steelers, now you only have a first and a third round pick in the first and second days of the draft. Typically when the Steelers want to make big moves, they still want to have enough draft picks to address certain areas. And so I could still foresee the Steelers making a move at some point that nets them back, maybe even at least a third round pick or something that allows them to get two day two picks in this NFL draft class. Because again, if you would ask me, I did not think that the Steelers were going to go after DK Metcalf for a first and a third. If you had told me a second and this kind of finances, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have said that, nah, I think they're going to be a little bit more patient. But clearly the Steelers, in the 11th hour of the tampering period open, they want to get things done. And I wonder, here's another thought I have on this. I wonder if this move is a sign to whoever they're talking to, whether it's Fields, Wilson, whoever they want a quarterback. Hey, this is what you're going to be working with. You got a star receiver. It's not going to just be George Pickens and Van Jefferson and Ben Skowronek. This is going to be, you're going to have Metcalf, and maybe they will keep Pickens. Maybe they're saying, hey, you know what? Pickens is going to ride it out in the last year of his deal, and we'll kind of do what the Bengals have been doing and paying, franchise tag him while you're paying another wide receiver. But maybe you're able to do that and keep those two playmakers. Then you still have Calvin Austin. You're still hoping to have Roman Wilson. And honestly, with the trading for DK Metcalf, if they keep George Pickens, it lessens the need to draft a wide receiver high in this draft class. So maybe that's the answer, that they don't need that extra pick. Personally, I still think it would behoove them if they were able to get at least a day 2 wide receiver in this draft class, preferably like an Alec Yamanor out of Stanford. It'd be nice if they got Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. But personally, now that they've traded for DK Metcalf, I find it hard to see that they're going to draft one in the first round to pair with him for the long term, especially considering the type of team that they profess that they want to be. They want to be the type of team that's going to dominate the trenches, and they need other things with that, right? They need better cornerback play. We've talked about they needed better wide receiver play. I thought they might go to the more natural route and try to draft a wide receiver that they develop long term and work into their system. But to me, this is a move that clearly says they're tired of waiting to get it wrong, or waiting to develop guys on the offensive side of the ball. They need leaders now. They need playmakers now. And DK Metcalf, leader, playmaker, all of those things injected into your offense. And now, whichever quarterback you get, you know that you have him as a star receiver. And again, if you keep George Pickens, that means you got 2 big-time playmaker wide receivers that can be wide receiver ones in plenty of offenses in the NFL. And if the offensive line takes a step forward, now you're starting to build the semblances of what you want to be in the coming years, as far as finding your offensive identity. But still, quarterback's a big question. If it's Russell Wilson, it makes sense because now you got 2 guys that can go up and get it, and that's a big part of Russell Wilson's game, right? But I don't think the Steelers should lose sight of Justin Fields in this equation, just because even unless Justin Fields is being completely unreasonable. But maybe Justin Fields was waiting to say, like, hey, not only do I want to see the finances in this deal, I want to see who I'm working with at wide receiver, because I don't want to have to be throwing to Scotty Miller on third downs. I want to be able to throw to playmakers and be in an offense that has talent around it that lets me work with these other guys. And maybe this is a sign that, like, hey, you're getting that. But again, now this impacts the money, because again, $30 million off of 64 gets you about $34 million left in salary cap space. The Steelers still could cut Larry Ogunjobi, save $7 million. That would get them to over $40 million. And that's still enough money to probably sign a big name corner, and then still sign still sign a quarterback, and then still sign a few other solid pieces here and there. But DK Metcalf is a major splash for the Steelers. Omar Khan continues to flip this roster upside down. You think of this time last year going into free agency, we all thought Kenny Pickett was going to be the quarterback. Who would have thought about him, before it happened, that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields would be the starting quarterbacks for the Steelers in 2024 when we were heading into that last free agency. And who would have thought that DK Metcalf would be a wide receiver on this team around that time as well? The Steelers clearly committed to making big moves, and they are making changes. And despite what people think about, the Steelers don't want to make changes, they just want to stay complacent. They don't want to make any moves. They do, but it takes time to do it, and this is clearly one of those moves. Now, again, I'm not 100% sure that this is the right move, because I've been thinking, like, hey, become that team in the trenches. And if you can get your playmaker. I really think that second round pick could be very useful this year in a draft that is very deep with depth players, and that could be a sweet spot. Again, the Steelers could make some moves and maybe reacquire a second round pick, reacquire an extra third round pick, and find a way to make that happen. But to me, this means that this is the first they chose to make this superstar playmaker their first big domino to fall.
That month of madness, it's here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. If you want to look that far into the future, the futures are there for you. I've got an eye on a couple that I'm thinking about. We got to see how the seedings all shake out. FanDuel makes it easy to back your favorites with spreads, totals, game props. And with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. I don't wait around. I just get the money. It's great. And with conference tournament season in full swing, you can turn that $5 into $200 in bonus bets tonight. How about a little Montana State, Idaho State? Big Sky Tournament. Montana State, slight favorites. FanDuel has them laying 1.5. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long.
Davante Adams, you are a Los Angeles Ram.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast.
Davante Adams is a Los Angeles Ram. Ian Rappaport tweeted out sources. Davante Adams to the Rams. He gets a 2-year deal worth $46 million with $26 million guaranteed. He wanted to stay on the West Coast. He'll go on to tweet, Davante Adams wanted more than $20 million per year to stay on the West Coast. He gets that and more. And while there was always talk of him landing with Aaron Rodgers, he found the right place for him. And the Rams, they've been tweeting up a storm too. The Rams tweet out a picture of Davante Adams and said, going, back to Cali. Like that. Shout out to late great notorious B.I.G. from his song Going Back to Cali. Also, of course, Davante Adams from California went to Fresno State. And the Rams get that premier elite wide receiver that they've been after for the last couple of seasons. I can tell you that they were very interested in Mike Evans last offseason. They were very interested in trading up for Rome Odunze. They've been looking to add talent to the wide receiver room to try to give Matthew Stafford more weapons, to try to pair Puka Nacua with another wideout. Now, Cooper Kupp, unfortunately, they've been looking for a trade partner for him. They are most likely going to cut him. It's terrible to even think that, but the NFL is a business, and Les Snead, Sean McVay and company, they're trying to do what they think will give them the best chance to compete for a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford back. And just a little rewind, every listeners will know, we've been talking about Davante Adams on this show. We said that this would be the guy that the Rams should consider going after, because if you add Davante Adams, even though he's on the older side, he's a little over 30, right? I mean, he's not the best age for an elite wide receiver, but I'll tell you why that's not going to matter, because you are all gas, no brakes, and you're all the way in with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay and a young emerging core on the defensive side. And this is another signal of that. They have taken off the Rolex, thrown in the middle of the table, grabbed the wife's earrings, thrown in the table, took the lien on the mortgage, thrown in the middle of the table. They're all in on pursuing a Lombardi trophy in 2025. And what makes this such a sensible move for the Rams is you get an elite wide receiver who, yeah, maybe he's peaked, but still can be a top 5 to 10 guy, especially when you pair him with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay and Mike LaFleur in this Rams offense. And you don't have to give him this long-term deal like T. Higgins or Godwin and some of these other wide receivers that could have been available. I think Davante Adams still has that ceiling and that ability to be up there with the best receivers. He brings you that juice. This is someone who is in the conversation for best receivers in the league for the last 5 to 7 years. And you look at his contract, look, after the season in 2026, you could keep him in the horns. He could come back as a Ram at a $30 million cap hit, but you could also move on with $12 million in dead cap, and you would save $18 million. So essentially, even though this is a 2-year deal, it can work out as a 1-year deal. So the Rams kind of have that protection. It's not going to be like we saw with Allen Robinson if things don't work out. And I would much rather bet on Davante Adams than Allen Robinson. This is a different caliber of player. And you look at this wide receiver room now. You got Puka Nacua. You got Tutu Atwell. You got Jordan Whittington. WR1, WR2, WR3. I think that you look at the money that they gave to Tutu Atwell, and I said this on this past episode, is everyone was freaked out about the $10 million as if they were coming to the grips with the fact they weren't going to get someone else and that you're paying him to be WR2. That was never the case, because that wasn't WR2 money. That wasn't WR1 money. This is the kind of financial commitment you need to make to a player that you expect that level of production from. And essentially what the Rams are signaling here is they were okay with giving $10 million to Tutu Atwell, $26 million to Davante Adams, and you look at $36 million for Davante Adams and Tutu Atwell versus giving Cooper Kupp $20 million, right? So that is how they're looking at this. And I think that this is a great move. I'm extremely excited. I'm pumped just because, look, it hurts just because it does feel like you're kind of moving on from Cooper Kupp in a way where, yeah, it hurts. But the truth of the matter is for this offense to take full advantage of what Matthew Stafford has left, you had to bring in someone that you could have as a downfield threat, someone that does different things that Cooper Kupp just wasn't able to do at this stage of his career. And I'll give you 5 reasons why I love this move. And the first reason is just that, is you raise the floor, you raise the ceiling of what this Rams offense could be in 2025. Puka Nacua, Davante Adams, that is a fantastic 1-2 punch right there. I don't know if Davante Adams is going to give Puka something very expensive. Is he going to give a Porsche like Shohei Ohtani gave to Joe Kelly for number 17? I don't know about that. I've seen photoshops of him wearing 15, so I think he was comfortable with that. But the consistency of Davante Adams is what I think you don't have to worry as much about the age factor, the durability factor. He's 32. He turns 33 on Christmas Eve this season. But you look at the consistency. He has put up numbers all throughout his career, no matter if it's with a good organization, a bad organization, a good quarterback, a bad quarterback. He's gone out there and he's produced. You look since 2019, 997 yards that season receiving. That was just 3 yards shy of a 1,000-yard season, and he played in 12 games that year. But 2020, 18 touchdowns, 1,374 yards. 2021, 1,553. 2022, 1,516. 2023, 1,144. 2024, 1,063. So he's had 1,000+ yards receiving in every season dating all the way back to 2019. And even before that, 2018, he had 1,386 yards. This guy is good for a 1,000-yard season. Last 5 seasons, he's had 1,000-yard seasons, and in 2019, he was 3 yards away from that, and he would have had 7 straight 1,000-yard seasons. So you're getting that consistency. He's also 14th in separation still. So he still is a tier 1 separator, and this is someone that is elite when it comes to route running, getting in and out of his breaks and the footwork. And I just think you're going to get the best version of him, someone that's completely re-energized. He got to experience what it was like to be back with his guy Aaron Rodgers with the Jets. They had some fun, got some closure, but now he's with the Rams, with Matthew Stafford, an elite thrower of the football. And I think that he's going to be in a good position to be optimized. And yeah, he's not the blocker that Cooper Kupp is, but he can do the things that Cooper Kupp did while also giving you that ability to stretch the field and be a downfield threat. You're going to see him on underneath routes. You're going to see him extending plays for Matthew Stafford and getting first downs and moving the chain. So he can do the things that he can't do. Some of the things from a run blocking standpoint he can, but that's not what he's built to do, and that's not what he's meant to do. But you also get that weapon downfield that this Rams offense so desperately needed. And also you look at the dependability. 2019, that was the last time he didn't play at least 14 games in a season, and he still played 12 that year. So for a guy that is 32 years old, just look at, last season, he even played 14 games. Before that, 17 in 23, 17 in 2022, 2021, 16. So this is someone who has just continued to go out there and post and be durable. He just does not miss games. He's definitely been sort of an Iron Man for that position. So the durability's there, the numbers are still there, and then you look at what the Rams need. On top of just a deep threat where Matthew Stafford can just throw the ball down the field, how about a red zone threat? We saw what Sean McVay did with Sammy Watkins. We saw what Sean McVay did with OBJ. He's 6'1". He is that red zone weapon that has really been the biggest absence for this Rams offense. The red zone against the Lions in the wild card game in 2024. You just need that guy that you can trust in those situations to go out there. You can target him and he can make those plays. Davante Adams is going to bring that firepower.
That month of madness, it's here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. If you want to look that far into the future, the futures are there for you. I've got an eye on a couple that I'm thinking about. We got to see how the seedings all shake out. FanDuel makes it easy to back your favorites with spreads, totals, game props, and with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. I don't wait around. I just get the money. It's great. And with conference tournament season in full swing, you can turn that $5 into $200 in bonus bets tonight. How about a little Montana State, Idaho State? Big Sky tournament. Montana State, slight favorites. FanDuel has them laying 1.5. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long.
Well, in the end, everybody has a price, including Myles Garrett.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast.
Let's get down to the brass tacks here. Big news, of course, coming down Sunday, stunningly, right around lunchtime, as Myles Garrett has now agreed, he's pivoted from his stance and agreed to a record-setting contract extension with the Cleveland Browns. It makes him not only the highest paid defensive player in the NFL, it makes him the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, which is also pretty important to note because, as is the case, we know there's some other big deals that are going to be sort of negotiated here. Jamar Chase is looking for a contract extension. Does he try to one-up Myles Garrett and get a big deal? So this has ripple effects throughout the NFL as well. Micah Parsons is part of this equation because he's looking for a new contract extension with the Cowboys. But the details that we know are this. It's 4 years tacked onto the 2 that he already has left on his contract. $40 million per year on average, $123.5 million guaranteed, with a total of $204.8 million all when it's all said and done. It keeps him in Cleveland theoretically through 2030. But it's also important to know that it has a no trade clause. And I bring that up because that does give him it gives the Browns more leverage in that they control his future for a longer period of time, which is the thing that I have been saying. Why would he sign a contract extension if it's not about the money for weeks now? If it gives the team more control over his future, this is a way to get some control back. Like, this means if at some point down the line he decides I'm going to request a trade again, even maybe as recently as next year, God forbid, if the Browns decide we're going to clean house and we're firing Kevin Stefanski, we're firing Andrew Berry, it's time to move on. Myles might say, I'm not part of this. I don't want to do this. I want out. And he gets more say then in the type of team or what team he decides to go to. And so what I think is interesting about all this is that, of course, the initial reaction becomes, well, it was all about the money. And I even led the show with that. And I do think this does prove that at some point, everybody has a price. Being the highest paid non-quarterback in football is a pretty nice thing to say for Myles. It's a pretty nice feather in his cap in terms of his career. And he's now sets the market for like these top tier players that aren't quarterbacks in terms of what they are worth to their teams. So I do think that's interesting to know and interesting to have that on his resume and be able to say that. At the end of the day, like, listen, money does tend to resolve these things in the NFL, and I think that's important to note. But I do think in his heart of hearts, like, this wasn't about the money when Myles started this conversation. I mean, listen, we followed the conversation. Each and every single one of you followed the conversation. You saw how this played out. You saw him put out the public statement. You saw him go show up at Radio Row and make the stops with Rich Eisen and others and talk about why he was doing this and how it was about winning. He was very adamant that this was not about the money. And even as recently as last week at the NFL Combine, you had the report about how his representation has told the Browns, we don't want to negotiate a contract extension. What it sounds like happened, and I know Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com reported this, based off the conversations with Myles' agent, it sounds like he basically said, you know what, I'm going to change my mind here. I'm going to pivot. I'm happy to stay in Cleveland, especially if that's what they're going to be willing to give me. And so in some respects, I guess that does mean money eventually talks and money eventually convinces everybody to do things that maybe they don't want to do. But it does just sound like he had a change of heart is the way that his agent even put it. So listen, I can respect the fact that things change. But I still believe in my heart of hearts that when he started this adventure and he started the trade request from the beginning, that he planned on seeing it through to a point where he didn't want to play in Cleveland anymore. And it wasn't about the money. But again, things change. That's life. That's life in the NFL. That's life anywhere. So yeah, I think the money is the thing that obviously changed course here. And they were able to iron things out. I think the no trade clause is an important part of this, like I alluded to, because like I said, that gives him more leverage in a way over his future if he decides to do this again at some point. I think that maybe is something that gets thrown in here, and it's part of the discussion. It's part of the equation in terms of the contract, but it can't be, just slept on or not talked about, because that is something that players ask for when they do want a little bit more control over what they can do down the line. And so he gets a little bit more leverage back in his favor that way. And I wonder if that's maybe something that helped push a deal across the finish line. But obviously it's a good day in Cleveland in the sense that you're keeping your star pass rusher. The other part of this is, and I've talked about this before, when Myles Garrett made this trade request, I called it like it gave the Browns some clarity. It gave the Browns a vision of where they're really at. Okay, Myles Garrett says you're not ready to contend for a Super Bowl. He wants out. Okay, you now have a path to pivot to, okay, let's try to rebuild. Let's look to the draft. Let's add draft capital, add players, try to build this roster from the ground up again, not strip it down to what it was in 16, 17. I'm not saying, I don't think anybody ever has to do that in the NFL, but you could at least sort of reset here and start sort of moving forward with a different look and a different vision that didn't include Myles Garrett. I thought he gave some clarity to this organization. The Browns, though, remained adamant they weren't going to trade him. And so their plan for this entire time was, yeah, we envision Myles being here for a long time. We're going to try to stay competitive. And we all sat there. Like, I questioned it. You questioned it. Others questioned it. Is that the right move? Can they really turn this thing around quickly? Are they really just a quarterback away? These are all questions we were asking this entire offseason so far. And I was perplexed because at the combine, I even asked Andrew Berry straight up, why does it seem like you have this, you believe in their heart of hearts, the team did, that they can convince Myles to stay when it felt like he had drawn a line in the sand? And for whatever reason, they seemed overly confident about it. As much as even Kevin Stefanski saying, we believe Myles is going to be here in 2025 and beyond. And I could not wrap my head around how this team had so much confidence that Myles was going to be there when it felt like there was nothing to get him back on board. And then you got the report about the contract extension and how he wasn't going to sign anything, and he wasn't interested. He had slammed the door on even having those conversations, and it just felt like it was inevitable. Then you got the report on this past Friday, that he was willing to sit out games, and he was denied a meeting with Jimmy Haslam. And we were all talking about how bad of a look that was for the Browns and for Jimmy Haslam and for this team as they try to soften the blow of this Myles Garrett situation and maybe convince him to stay, because that's what they've been saying they wanted to do. How does that help that goal if that's what they were hoping to do? But I guess credit to them, like, they knew all along. And to be fair, I'm not in those rooms having those conversations with Myles. They were the only ones who knew where his head was at. And if this was truly like a change of heart thing, maybe they knew where his head was at, but they just felt like if we wait him out, well, we can call his bluff here and we can get him back on board. They proved to be right. They proved to be right in that venture. They proved that, being patient with it and digging in paid off. Somebody was going to win the standoff. Somebody was going to give in, and it ends up being Myles in the end, which is stunning because I really thought he could take this thing farther. Now, I always did doubt, and maybe this was why the Browns called his bluff. My biggest doubt, and I talked about this on Friday after that report came out about him potentially missing games, I wasn't sure I believed Myles would actually skip games. He cares about his legacy. He cares about, even if he downplays it and talks about how individual awards don't matter to him, it's evident every time he talks that he cares about his legacy. He cares about what he's leaving behind in the game of football. And so I doubted if he would skip games, but he flat out said on through these reports that he would. And so that was where I was like, okay, if he's really willing to up the ante, sure, maybe he will. And that, I think, gave him more leverage than what people were letting on, because sitting out games, like, that's a solution for anybody. That would have solved nobody's problems. Myles doesn't get to go anywhere. And the Browns, who, by the way, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski might be on the hot seat, they need Myles to win games, which is what they need to be doing to save their jobs. And so it ends up being a non-resolution. Like, that wouldn't have solved anybody's problems. And so that's why I felt like Myles had more leverage. But again, saying something like that on March 7th is different than actually executing it in September. And now it won't even be something that he gets to follow through with. I'm fascinated to hear what Myles has to say about this, like when he first gets a chance to speak, which will be coming up here in April and, during the offseason program, assuming he shows up. I'm imagining he will now. But man, like, what a crazy turn of events from a situation that I did not think would get resolved like this. Definitely didn't think it would get resolved this quickly. And part of that statement from his agent and his representation about why he changed his mind was that he wanted this to get done before free agency so he can help recruit people to Cleveland. And so now all of a sudden he wants to be part of the solution rather than the problem. I, again, believe that it wasn't, when this all started, it wasn't about the money for Myles. I think it ends with him maybe not wanting to tarnish his legacy in Cleveland. Maybe there's some of that in play. Understanding the deal he was getting was just about the best deal you can get for not being a quarterback in this league. And he didn't want to leave that on the table while also gaining some power in his future, some control of his future with the no trade clause. It was a Godfather offer. And when push came to shove, it was Myles who gives in here. And so, yes, it will look like money talks and everybody has a price. But I think this feels like it was Myles just deciding to change course in terms of the trade request that he had made.